Hi everyone, I hope you were doing well. So today I wanted to actually create a little message on what are the three things that your spiritual awakening journey is going to be asking you to let go of. Now, you know, on your awakening journey, you will find that you lose a lot of things. Things get stripped away from you, and you get to a point sometimes after having gone through the dark night of the soul, having gone through the void, and you ask yourself, how much more do I need to let go of? How much more transformation do I need to go through? And while this is going to be unique and different for everybody, there are three things on your awakening journey, on your spiritual journey, that everybody comes across and has to let go of in order to ascend. So I really wanted to cover those in this message. Now, the first one I want to talk about is the illusion of control. Now, I say illusion because most of us have really grown up, in life prior to our awakening, thinking and believing that if we plan enough, if we worry enough, if think about things enough, if we involve enough people, if we create, massive situation around what we are experiencing, plan every little detail, that we can actually make life unfold exactly how we want. But the awakening journey will slowly reveal to you that life is far bigger and greater than your planning, your control, and your personal mind. Now, trying to control everything doesn't help anybody, right? It creates tension, it creates unnecessary fear, maybe even resistance for some people on their journey to, based on whatever is occurring. But we still don't get out of the way, because when we are unconscious about our, ability to try and control things, we can't get out of our own way because we don't see what we're doing. But on your awakening journey, at some point, you are asked to reach that point of spiritual maturity where you have to shift from controlling to trusting. Because trusting that higher power, that intelligence, that divine intelligence, that created life itself, must know something bigger and greater than what we can really plan for ourselves. And when we finally loosen our grip, we actually end up discovering that life will flow more beautifully, more naturally. And, really, we're trying to shift on your spiritual awakening journey from doing to actually being. And in doing so, we need to be present. As long as you are trying to be in control, trying to manipulate situations, trying to, control all the outcomes of what you're going through, you cannot make that shift. You cannot shift into the present, because having that sense of control over everything requires you to think ahead, requires you to think about the past, based on what you've learned from, so that you can prevent certain things from happening in the future. So, in order to really shift into that present moment, which is so needed on your spiritual awakening journey, you will need to let go of the control. Now, I have to point out that, surrendering doesn't actually mean that you're giving up responsibility or you're not taking accountability for some things. It just means that you are giving up that illusion that you can actually plan things better than that they're meant to by that higher intelligence, by the divine, by how life is supposed to unfold for us naturally. So on this journey, if you haven't already reached this point, expect to really let go of control so that you can actually shift and ascend on your awakening journey. Now, the second thing you want to be prepared for, really letting go of on your awakening and spiritual journey, is your attachment to the external world. Now, once again, we have, all grown up in life really pegging our personal happiness to something on the outside. We've, as long as we live in that egoic identity that we've built for ourselves, we are usually focused on happiness, coming to us from our achievements, our relationships, the things that we've bought for ourselves, the status, or the circumstances that life really presents us with, and how we move through them. And as long as we are successful, as long as, things are working out the way we want them to, we feel a false sense of happiness. And I say false sense of happiness because usually the emotion that you feel out of any one of these things is temporary. If you, let's say, spent 3 years going to school only to have a particular career, most people feel, they spend those 3 years working towards that career. And then once they finally have that career or they land their dream job, it's only so far after that they realize, wait, this doesn't really bring me the happiness or fulfillment that I thought. And you spend all this time working towards that goal, but then it doesn't really deliver on what you're hoping it will. So once again, as you move along on your awakening journey, the one thing that you end up learning is that as long as your peace and happiness is pegged and tied to something outside of you, you will never really be happy. And so as you move on, you start to shift that awareness from the outside world to your inner world. You end up tapping into something that's more everlasting. The joy, the peace that really comes from within is nothing like what we experience on the outside. And that shift is absolutely necessary for you to really experience on your awakening journey, because unless you do that, you will always feel unfulfilled. And the purpose of your awakening journey is still left unfulfilled. Now, while I say that, I do want to be clear that this doesn't actually mean that you are rejecting the outside world or withdrawing to a point from life that you no longer interact with it the same way. Instead, what this really means is that you're learning to participate in life without becoming, completely absorbed by what's outside of you, whether it be possessions, whether it be people. You are no longer dependent on something outside of you for your happiness, for your peace. And that is critical for you to understand and shift on this spiritual awakening journey. Now, last but not least, that you really must let go of on your awakening journey is your ego identity. The whole purpose of your awakening is for you to dissolve your ego. Ego and the identity that we've built for ourselves really takes an entire lifetime. All it is a collection of stories that we've managed to tell ourselves about who we are, why we are the way that we are. It has to do with our roles, our achievements, our wounds, the labels and titles we've given ourselves. And some of them we've really worked hard for. For example, if you are a doctor, you've spent years and years going through, studying medicine to become that person. And it's a thing of honor for you to have finally gained that title. And then comes along this awakening experience that tells you that you're not really that person. That is just a label that you've acquired and achieved, but it's very temporary. But when we're talking about spirituality, we are trying to get to know ourselves at the eternal level, who we are beyond every person, every role we've ever played each lifetime. And that is an eternal soul that is formless, that is nameless, that is beyond any identity. And so this comes as a significant shock to most people. It can feel very unsettling because the ego likes the certainty, likes the definition, and to really shift and move away from that can take some time. But the truth is, as these identities start to fall away, as the labels that you've given yourself fall away, the stories that you've built for yourself fall away, something deeper actually becomes more visible. And that is the eternal awareness behind all of these roles, all of these stories, all of these labels that you've managed to give to yourself. But what's important to understand is that letting go of your ego identity isn't about destroying the self. It's about no longer being imprisoned by the stories about who we think we must be in order to be successful, in order to be identified, in order to be recognized, in order to be known. So that shift is going to be, crucial for you on your spiritual awakening journey. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. God bless.